Hey everybody, welcome to NFL Fantasy Live. Patrick Claybon here with Cynthia Freeland and Adam Rank here to get you the one more game that we got in Week 1 coming up tonight. But speaking of Week 1, congratulations to the Lions and the Bears, big winners in Week 1, Cynthia.
I mean, both dramatic finishes, to be fair.
Yes,
Yours was a tale of two halves. Mine took overtime. Like, Colleen Wolfe actually texted me. She's like, why did I even watch the first 60 minutes?
Right?
It was a fair point. It was a very fair point.
Then everybody's like, all right, let's see the Rams get the ball back. You're like, oh, wait, there's different rules in the playoffs. There's different rules. I'm like, I'd pick a set of rules for the overtime and stick with it all the way through.
The Lions and Bears managed to make it difficult to get a win. Getting a win in fantasy football much easier if you had some of the guys featured in our very next segment. We got the Sunday studs, the guys that went off. Cynthia, why don't you lead us off? Who are your Sunday studs?
Mike Evans. This was a
Yes.
great opportunity to target Baker Mayfield in a game where the secondary was sus, if you will.
Bad.
And 6 targets, 5 of them he caught, 61 yards. But not just 1 trip to the end zone, 2, that was great for your fantasy day. It kept me from being eliminated in our guillotine league.
Yes.
Adam Rank, thank goodness
Sorry,
for
Mark
you.
DiPaolo.
Listen, we're not talking about, I'm just talking about that I'm still in it. That's all I care about. Then we have another guy who saw the end zone twice. Stephon Diggs in his debut. We talked about the Indianapolis secondary. He exploited them. Only 33 yards. It doesn't matter because you got those 6 receptions. That was 6 points for you and 2 touchdowns, which was ginormous. It made him wide receiver number 8 so far headed into Monday night. And listen, nowhere else in all of the fantasy landscape were we talking
You don't
about
get
starting.
this.
Nobody else was telling you to
Nope.
start. Only us.
Nobody was
We
talking
were
about
the ones.
Josh
We were the
Allen.
only ones to tell you that you were absolutely starting Josh Allen. However, it did not look good in the beginning of that game. They were digging themselves into a pretty deep hole, and you know who got them out? 17. Is he Superman? We're not sure. He is your fantasy Superman, absolutely over 31 points. And of course, 2 trips to the end zone on the ground, which was more than, even I had forecast for him. So Josh Allen, listen, this is the type of hard-hitting fantasy news you're going to get nowhere else
Josh
to start
Allen.
Josh Allen.
Remember where you heard the name first on NFL Fantasy Live.
Right here.
Smiling Debbie
Here in
is
September.
writing it down right now. Josh Allen.
Right,
Got
who
it.
are your Sunday studs?
Well, I'm going to start with an old familiar name that we were talking up a lot during the preseason. He ended up as the RB5 on the week. And of course, I'm talking about Alvin Kamara. Oh, love the output that he had in this contest. Now, obviously, 5 receptions, 27 yards. That's kind of what we expect. Like, a lot of his production comes from catching the football. But here's the thing. He ran the ball 15 times for 83 yards. He was averaging over 5.5 yards per carry. He scored a rushing touchdown. He had 3 goal line rush attempts. This was an amazing output. A lot of people picked up Alvin Kamara in the 5th round. This player could end up being a fantasy MVP for you. And speaking of MVPs, or at least college MVPs at one point, Baker Mayfield. I had this question come to me on Sunday morning.
What was it?
I do a little live stream on my TikTok and my Instagram, simulcast. They're like, do I want Dak Prescott or Baker Mayfield? And I said, this sounds crazy, but I actually like Baker Mayfield in this game. Great matchup against the Washington Commanders, who last year struggled against the pass, and it certainly turned out that way once again. But this is a different Baker Mayfield than we've seen over the last number of years. Getting out of Cleveland does wonders for a lot of people, especially Baker Mayfield. And I think that this is somewhat sustainable. So if you have Baker Mayfield, I think you can ride with them for most of the year. And if you need a quarterback, because you did something like draft Caleb Williams to be your starter, go out and find Baker Mayfield, at least for a couple of weeks. I'm going to go back to New Orleans because I absolutely love Rashid Shaheed. There is a segment of Twitter with the Rashid Shaheed truthers, and we all had a collective celebration yesterday when Shaheed got into the end zone. Listen, he's much better in best ball formats and all that stuff, and I completely understand that. But there are opportunities, especially with matchups like the Carolina Panthers, where you can comfortably start him. So I'm not saying he's a every week guy, but Rashid Shaheed deserves your love and adoration because he's awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. And you could say the game script, right? That was considering it was a blowout.
Yeah.
What happens when the Saints need to throw a little bit more? We'll check in on Rashid Shaheed later. But my Sunday studs start with a guy who was in a new spot. And I owe you an apology because I did not think that the Texans got all this talent on the outside and they brought in Joe Mixon to load him up with carries, but they certainly did. And they needed to. 30 carries, 159 yards, Cynthia.
Say it again.
30 carries, 159 yards.
Dang.
I am sorry, I was wrong about Joe Mixon.
Everyone was.
He also had 3 catches as well. He's never had a game with 30 carries going over 5 yards a pop. What a start to his career in Houston Texans. And in that same game, Anthony Richardson continues to be a fantasy point manufacturer. 26 points in the loss, had 2 touchdowns of over 50 yards, including one of the best throws that we're going to see this football season. He's played 3 full games now in his career, averages over 25 points a game in those starts. He's just a machine. And what a start on Sunday Night Football for Jameson Williams. Jamo had 9 targets,
Woo!
5 catches, 121 yards, and a 52-yarder on a stop and go for the store. But it's the targets that leap off the screen to me, kind of signaling that Jameson Williams is no longer decoration in this offense. He's a full-on foundational part of the Detroit Lions, which we love to see. And congratulations
Love to see it.
to everybody who started these guys.